Hi, this is Cliff Whitmer, and the next module we're going to talk about is Picket Spacer. If you haven't seen some of the other videos, you can go back and take a look at them. There's a playlist on the same YouTube site that you got this one off of. Picket Spacer is similar to Even Spacer with a couple of differences. In this, once again, we try to keep it very simple. So for a flat rail section, if we look at our example pictures down here, there's two things that we lay out pickets for. So we all know that everyone has their different method for laying out the rail pickets between rail posts. Some people put the first picket right against the post, and then they just go, they try to figure out from there how to evenly space it. Some people just start in the middle and space them 3.5, and you end up with a really small space at the end potentially. So there's different ways of doing it, but I really like all my pickets to have a very consistent space all the way across. So one of the things we can do is we can use this spacer thing. We can use this spacer module, and we can also use it for spacing pickets up an incline. So for a stair rail, we know that these pickets have to space along here, and to get those spaces even, it's a lot more difficult computation. But you'll see with the Picket Spacer app, it's pretty simple. So let's look at a flat rail first. So for a flat rail, let's say that our opening is, we'll say it's 5 foot 10.5 inches between. So if we measure between the posts, it's 5 foot 10.5. Now the picket width, that's the width of the actual picket. So if you're using a 2x2, they're usually around 1.5 inches. That's already populated for us because it's configured in the settings. If you click up here and go on to settings, you'll see that in there we're going to have picket width is right here, set to 1.5. You can change that, and then it'll default it in for you. Just like I was saying, you could change it to show you feet and inches as well right here. With the back button and go back to where we were. So we've got an opening width of 5 foot 10.5. We've got a picket width of 1.5 inches, and we've got a max picket space. Now that's the distance between the pickets, because code where I'm at on a flat rail, a 4-inch ball cannot pass through any part of the railing, including between the pickets. There's also this slider here shows that we're on a flat rail, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But if we hit calculate, we'll see the stair angle 0 because it's a flat rail. It tells you the number of pickets you need. So this is how many pickets you're going to have to cut for that section. And then the picket spacing. This is the spacing that's between the pickets. So it's 3 5/8. So it's definitely less than the 4 inches. So the way most everything works here to try to be consistent is we do set ahead spacing. So set ahead spacing. So again, it's a flat rail. If you start your tape right here at the 0 mark and you go for LM1, that point right there is 3 5/8, and then LM2 is 8 13/16. LM3 is 13 15/16, and so on, all the way across the rail, and then your pickets will be spaced nice and evenly. Now, let's say, for example, you have a stair rail. Now, if we change this to stair, we have 2 more items that we have to put in because we need to know the pitch of the rail to do the calculations. So most stairs that I do have a 10-inch rise, so that's a default. It's already set up for you. But 10-inch run, I'm sorry. The rise can be variable, but let's just say it's 7 inches. Okay, so there's a 7-inch rise. I hit the back button to get rid of the keyboard. 7-inch rise. So now if I hit calculate, it's going to tell you the stair angle is about 35 degrees, 34.99, and the number of pickets is 10, and the picket spacing is 3 7/8. Now, the picket spacing, that's again the distance between the pickets is 3 7/8. Just so you know, you fall below the 4-inch because we set up here that our max picket space was going to be 4 inches. So it's 3 7/8. But the first measurement's actually 4 3/4 inch on our layout marks. The reason for that is you are measuring up the angle. So you lay your tape on here and you go 3 and what was it, 4 3/4. So you go 4 3/4 up, and then 11 and 5/16, and then you put the long point of your picket right at that mark, and they'll be spaced nice and evenly all the way up. So that should work out, and that will give you evenly spaced pickets every time, and your decks will look much more professional. So click the back button here and go back to the menu, and we'll talk about some of the other modules in a later video. Thanks.